Hello, BookTube. Good God. Well, this is a problem. We made Hannah is visiting. Hannah at Hannah's Books is visiting. Those of you coming to this video before you get to the other one, we've just been nattering about books, and good God, that is the dangerous thing to do when you've got a camera running. So this is part 2. She's got more questions. She's asking questions, but they're fun. Lots of fun. They'll involve you too. So let's get on to the next one. Because sooner or later we have to turn the camera off and eat and drink and socialize. But what is the next one?
Play with Bean. Well, I was thinking since Shake Timber is coming, 12th Night or As You Like It, which are my 2 favorite comedies.
Boy, you have an instinct for this, don't you? For the Achilles tendon. I don't like Shakespeare's comedies.
At all?
Almost not at all. 12th Night's better, I think, than any of the others, but
interesting.
The scenario that we described for classical authors, where we know from the records that they had 75 works, but time and the worm and the fire and the flood have decreased the number to a much smaller fraction. If that story were true for Shakespeare and it was the comedies that were missing, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't miss them. I don't think most of the, and it's not a question of translation of humor staling over centuries, because Deb and I went to these things when they were at the Globe, and the jokes weren't good then, and they still aren't good. Are you kidding? Most of Shakespeare's real funny stuff, the jokes that actually land, are not in his comedies. They're elsewhere. I'm not saying he wasn't funny, but when he was trying to be funny, he was disastrous.
The tragedies are definitely much funnier.
Yeah, the tragedies, history plays, they're genuine, brilliant comic bits scattered throughout. But the comedies where we're supposed to be having a great time. In fact, I think one of the reasons that I love Twelfth Night is because it has such non-comedic elements weaving all the way through it. They're unavoidable.
Yeah,
it's not
even
like,
at the end.
and even at the end, right? It's not like some director could artfully take them out. You can't take them out. They're part of the play. I think that might be why I tend to like it the way I do. But you like the comedy.
I do. In fact, I like As You Like It because of the huge amount of gender play that's just a whole level above. It's a boy playing a girl, playing a boy, playing a girl. It's just phenomenal.
Now,
so
how much of that is a result of the fact that you have a Shakespeare Freak for a son?
100%. 100%. I had read maybe 3 Shakespeare plays and seen maybe 2, including weirdly Winter's Tale as a college student because my roommate was in it, in the chorus, not the chorus, but a small part. I knew nothing about Shakespeare until my kid became a Shakespeare nerd.
A very rare instance, a charming instance, where the kid broadens the parents' appreciation of a canonical
I
author.
didn't even know Shakespeare wrote comedies.
Oh my.
I may have learned that before Abe, but it was definitely, I was an adult. And my son has joked about becoming a stand-up tragedian.
I get to the end of Winter's Tale. I get to the key pivotal scene at the end of Winter's Tale. And I turn to Deb and say, don't get any ideas. When you're gone, you're going to stay gone, okay? I've had enough of you as it is.
You're not going to put her statue in the corner. So.
Deb and I are also working on Zoom chats, just so that you know. She's back in Boston, so she will be back on this channel to give crap in return instead of just taking them.
Okay, a few sillier ones. J.S. Bach, CPE Bach, or PDQ Bach?
It would have to be PDQ Bach. The least talented of Bach's 13 odd children, and the honest.
Who plays the most instruments?
Yes, he plays the most instruments.
As much as I love Bach, I totally agree with you.
Oh
as much as I
man,
love
there's
J.S.
nothing
Bach.
better than a little nightmare music. There's nothing better than that. You are full of unseemly self-love. Taste prevents me from saying what you are full of.
I got to see him when I was in college. It was so much fun. Beowulf or Gilgamesh?
Should we clarify that they're PDQ Bach?
Oh yes,
I got a
I'm
feeling
sorry, I
that,
was assuming.
I mean, how many people are going to know about classical music parody? The Weird Al Yankovic of classical music. How many
Because
people?
he's the Weird Al Yankovic. That's how I know him.
If you can find, I have never looked on YouTube for PDQ Bach. Do you think he's there? He probably is.
Probably.
You should look up PDQ Bach. You'll see what we mean. He is.
And their books.
He's not the greatest Bach.
But he's the youngest.
It's not the second greatest Bach. Not the third or the fourth greatest Bach. He's really kind of a disgrace to the Bach, is what he is. But you won't mind.
But he is much younger.
He is much younger, yes.
Yeah, I am.
Although I should say, I mean, I know it's a silly question, but I should say, don't slight C.P. Bach until you've heard him.
Right.
He's actually brilliant. He's actually brilliant. Nothing approaches Johann Sebastian Bach. Nothing does anywhere in the world. No composer of any kind. But C.P. Bach, he's delightful.
Yeah.
Absolutely delightful.
Yeah.
I actually prefer him when I have music playing when I'm doing something. Only because Bach, like Beethoven, just takes you over. You stop doing what you're doing. You just stop and
Interesting.
have to pay attention.
Huh. Well, C.P. Bach had a piano piece written just for left hand, and when I broke my right arm when I was a kid and played C.P. Bach's left-handed piece, and it was just beautiful. I've now forgotten what it was called.
What you doing? Are you trying to get on camera? Come up there.
Okay, so Beowulf or Gilgamesh?
Beowulf. Hands down.
Casablanca or Young Frankenstein?
Young Frankenstein. I don't like, no offense to the ghost of David Murphy, but I don't like Casablanca at all. I don't like the book, I don't like it. No, just so mannered. Just so, ugh. It's the theme running through my answers here, but it boils down to if I'm watching, reading, or listening to something, and I get the distinct impression that the creator of that something wants me to be impressed, I want to hear their passion. I don't want to hear them trying to manipulate my passion, if that makes any sense at all. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but no. No, not at all.
Oh, I love them both, and would certainly. I used to recite almost all the words from both.
Really? Have you read the book?
Mm-mm,
No.
never. Mm-mm.
Any? Dashiell Hammett?
Yes. Short stories, at least. It's been a long time. I don't even remember what they were. I read it for some homeschool reading group class, and I read it as well. My parents all did. But if a movie is ever made of my life, Ingrid Bergman has to play me.
Me too!
Oh, she'd be perfect.
She would be, wouldn't she?
Yes.
No. For me, it's got to be late period Catherine Hepburn.
Oh.
Hello, BookTube.
She totally could. She could totally do it. Okay, Hilary Mantel, Marilyn Robinson, or A.S. Byatt? As opposed to the ones you all dislike. You dislike all.
I love all three of these. Okay. All right. I think for technical proficiency, for brilliance, it has to be Marilyn Robinson. But in terms of enjoyment, there's nothing like, for me, Hilary Mantel. Absolutely. I mean, for God's sake, a historical novelist writing a well-acclaimed trilogy set in Tudor England.
Right up your alley.
There's no way. I mean, the alleys don't get any better than that. I mean, the joke is dead Kennedys, dead dogs, or dead Kennedys, dead Romans, and dogs. But you throw in the Tudor era, you have to. I'm going to say, on a personal level, on a purely personal level, I hope Sam doesn't object. I'm going to say Hilary Mantel. Those books, I just did a slow read through of Wolf Hall. I was just blown away on a sentence level, on a moment by moment scene level. I was just blown away, thinking the sheer amount of confidence it takes on the author's part to tell just this much of this scene and let me tell the rest. But leave it yourself and move on to something else. I don't have that kind of skill at all in a million years. Anyway, you?
Yeah, for thick books like that, to have that much restraint is definitely...
Oh, there's more that's not in
Yeah.
the Thomas Cromwell books than that's in them. Which is usually not the case with Tudor historical fiction. Usually it's every single bite of marzipan you get. Bean, do you want to go through there? No?
I love all three. There was definitely a time in my life when Possession first came out and I was in grad school in history that I loved A.S. Byatt. But I think I would probably choose Marilyn Robinson of these three, even though, as I said, I love all three.
Do you have a favorite A.S. Byatt? Is it Possession?
Mm-hmm. I read a lot of her short stories, and in fact, at the Brattle, David picked up a volume of her short stories that we hadn't read. But I think Possession would clearly be the winner. And David and I actually read it together, kind of before we were dating, or as we were starting to realize we were dating, which also makes it special. Aaron Copland or Bella Bartok? Do you like either?
I do, but only piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
No offense, Lukash. Only piece. They're not composers where I say I love them.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I like things by them, and I couldn't pick. There are things that I like equally by either of them, but I would say that I like them just in general as composers about the same. In that,
well, they're very similar.
They are very similar, and I think the pieces that really get to me are few, but equal. I don't have a favorite. Do you? Again, musical genius son. Does this play in here?
Well, I loved Appalachian Spring as a young person.
It strikes me that Abe would like Copeland more. Does he, or does he like
don't
Bartok?
know what he would answer. I know that he played Bela Bartok's Romanian folk dances, and when he played fiddle and classical violin, and I just loved listening to him practice. And so I'm not sure which one I would answer at this point. Copeland has a pretty deep spot in my heart. The connection with folk music for both of them definitely makes them related. A couple of historians who live in the Boston area. Jill Lepore, who wrote These Truths and The Secret History of Wonder Woman. And
Did you
Louis
read
Menand.
These Truths?
Yes.
What a book.
It's amazing.
I thought I was going to hate it.
And I actually initially got it on audio through the library, and she reads it herself. And I know you're not an audiobook fan, and I'm not really either, but, and of course after I loved it, I bought the whole book, but listening to her voice she's a really wonderful reader too.
Wow. I thought I was going to hate it. I thought it was going to be score settling from start to finish, just 21st century Twitter politics, and it wasn't.
I think it's brilliant.
It was absolutely brilliant. From beginning to end, I often have to eat my words with things like that. I make snap decisions, but I console myself. I look at myself in the mirror by saying my snap decisions are not in stone. I'm perfectly willing to revisit them. But who is Jill Lepore was one. Who's
Lou and Ant, who did Metaphysical Club and just did The Free World, which I haven't read yet, but I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I don't like him nearly as much as Jill Lepore.
He doesn't.
But you're not going to name Boston historians that I do love.
No, I'm
You're not going to name them. They have statues on the common, but she's not going to name them. She's not going to name the Boston.
Name some of your favorites.
Well, Samuel Eliot Morrison is number one. He's probably my favorite historian, just in general. No offense to Livy, Deb's Uncle Livy, her beloved Uncle Livy.
Uncle Livy.
But he's a Boston. You'll get more Boston historian than he does, and plenty of other people too, or at least New England, right? Francis Parkman, who's on that shelf up above us, he's great. But who did you list? You didn't list any of these people. These fusty old people.
I like both of them very much.
Yeah. You like the Metaphysical Club?
I loved the Metaphysical Club, and I wasn't really expecting to. I'm not quite sure why I picked it up. Oh, actually, I do know why I picked it up. It's a relevant story. But then just really loved it and found, and right after it, I read another book by somebody about, I've totally forgotten their names, but the mushrooms research at Harvard in the 60s. The famous people.
The 1860s?
1960s.
Oh.
With psychotropic drugs.
Timothy Leary?
Timothy Leary in that crowd. And the book was totally modeled on Metaphysical Club. It just fascinated me that the structure was so similar, and reading them back to back.
It's a winning structure.
Like, yeah, it is. And he writes really clearly. Jill Lepore just has so much energy and she does wonderful research, but she also really writes beautifully. And so yes, I like both of them a lot. And Secret History of Wonder Woman is the sort of hip and trendy, bringing real history to social history to audiences who wouldn't necessarily read academic history.
Yes. It was a little less successful. It was a popular book. It was a little less. I think across the board, it would probably be less successful with diehard comic book fans.
Oh, that's probably true.
Because it would feel, I got a carpetbagger feeling throughout the whole thing, and I don't like that. And there's no way to avoid it, because seriously trained historians probably didn't read comic books, and comic book writers are incapable of that kind of writing. They think they can, but they can't.
Well,
so it's very rare that you get.
I've read even fewer comics than I have science fiction.
I have read them all.
Well, periodically I watch one of your science fiction videos or one of your comics videos and think that's enough to...
Well, Michael K. Vaughan's never going to get to the real side of superheroes. He's never going to move over to DC Comics. We're never going to be talking about Wonder Woman. Instead, it's going to be one Freudian case after another. His heroes with feet of clay. I think we're doing Spider-Man next. Tomorrow, I think we're doing Spider-Man, who's clay all the way up to here.
Okay, Mark Rothko or Alexander Calder?
They're junk, both of them. They're complete frauds. Both of them are complete frauds. Not a matter of taste, not, well, you like this or I don't.
I thought that about Calder.
They're just frauds. Complete frauds. They never did anything that you couldn't do. I'm not saying that makes you a bumpkin. I'm saying that makes them a fraud to say it's art. Art is the product of skill. That's what you're paying for. That's what you're going to see. That's why you're lining up. It's a product of skill. The whole point of art is that you can't do it yourself. So they're both frauds.
I love Calder. And I actually think that idea of shape is so much beyond what I could do.
There are no ideas of shape with Calder. That is brochure speak. It's not actually there. If you didn't have the brochure speak, you wouldn't see it. And the reason why is because it's not there. I've been listening to phrases like that, amorphous phrases like the power of shape when it comes to Calder's crappy modules for the whole of his career. And it's not there. It's just in the brochure. The brochure is telling you what to think. If you went to Tanglewood and you didn't get the brochure, you didn't read the brochure, you would not be in any doubt when they got to Beethoven's Ninth. You wouldn't be in any doubt about any of it. You'd be moved right out of your skin. You'd be talking about it for days. Show me somebody who can get anything out of a Calder exhibit if they don't have the brochure.
I don't think I read the brochure when I went.
Oh, I watched you read.
So that was you.
But I don't want to discount Jed Pearl's 2-volume biography of Calder, which is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's a 2-volume brilliant biography of a complete fraud, but it's still brilliant. It's still absolutely incredible.
Well, if you're a Calder fan, go to the National Gallery East, because they have a big display with just fantastic lighting. So there's shadows from the shapes, and there are also fans, and so all of the mobiles are actually moving, so the shadows move.
Or you could get to the admission desk, and when they're asking you for your $45 for the show...
It's free?
Oh, it exacts a cost. If you want something quicker, okay, if it's free, if you want something quicker, then instead of going to the snooty person at the counter and saying, oh, the Calder exhibit, please, say, could you take me to the janitor's closet? Oh, sure, it's down the hall. It's not locked. It's just a couple of brooms and a mop. Why would you want to...
Maybe the Duchamp exhibit?
It's a corker.
All right. So, would you prefer a biography of a person you've never read about, or maybe even never heard of, or a biography of someone you've read several different biographies of?
Oh, several different.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, to me, I want to know where I stand. I want to know. It's not a question of learning the facts of a person's life. I want to know the job that the biographer does, and it's harder to know that the less you know about a person. How would you even know? If I hadn't been dragged to and it had Calder exhibits inflicted on me for years, I wouldn't have known where I was in Jed Pearl's books. I would have thought I would have been convinced he was talking about someone who did have talent. I haven't let it go. I'm still living in the last question. That's not good. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Well, this is sort of moving forward as well. Proust or Joyce?
Oh, God. Well, I'm committed to Proust. Proust-Timber is coming for all of us. Because I'm not going through this alone.
Proust-Tober?
Oh, Proust-Tober is coming for all of us. There's not going to be a Joyce event. I have done my time with Joyce. I am sure about Joyce. He is never going to be on that list of authors.
Not even on Bloomsbury Day?
No. 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 On Bloomsday, I celebrate Bloomsday by punching someone of Irish extraction. But not by dragging myself through that huge mountain of crap. God help us. No. No.
Joyce or Faulkner?
Oh, you're the devil.
I do my best.
See, this is why Jason Harrigan can confirm this. In all the medieval tapestries that they have, the devil has a scarf on. This is why. She's the devil. I hate them both. Who in their right mind doesn't hate them both?
There are a lot of us.
You like them both?
I like both. Yes, I like them both. I'm struggling with Faulkner right now. I love Faulkner. But I'm reading Sanctuary and not loving Sanctuary at all. It's really a hard read.
Why aren't you loving it? I'd be willing to bet the China that the answers that will come out of your mouth apply every bit as much to everything else he ever wrote. Which means it's conditioning and not the books.
It's about intense sexual violence, and that makes it different from some of the other complications in his books that make me dislike sections of Faulkner here and there. But this one is
But you find a worth in the prose?
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
Although, again, this book is just, even this book is full of some really beautiful prose.
I don't think I'm ever going to see that. Faulkner is like Joyce for me in that I think I've done my time enough so that...
Well, I find it interesting that you like Virginia Woolf because she plays some of the same modernist games that
She's not playing games. She means she couldn't write otherwise, and ultimately wouldn't care if I read it or not. Faulkner absolutely needs me to be there, and he is playing games. Joyce absolutely needs me to be there, and he is playing games. And not only are they playing games, but they think they're the coolest games in the world. It goes right back to what I said. If I can sense the author over my shoulder saying, huh? How about that? Huh? How about that? Wasn't that great? Then I want to tell them to take a hike. Whether it's Joyce or Faulkner or David Foster Wallace. But Virginia Woolf, no. There's no feeling like that there. Some of the outward effects may be the same.
That's what I was going to say, is that I'm not convinced she's not.
I don't care about outward effects. Believe it or not. People say I hate modernism, but I don't. I don't hate modernism. I love it when it's done the way...
So talk about modernism versus postmodernism.
Either way. With modernism and then with postmodernism, an element enters in where the author is present and watching you. Mm-hmm. And that drives me crazy. That absolutely drives me crazy. I don't want the author to be standing there saying, wasn't that good? Bet you didn't get that. I don't want that. Whether I get it or not, I don't want it. I don't want the author to be part of it. Seems like an odd thing to say, but I don't want the author to be part of my reading of their book. And right down the line, you will see in my taste that I love the authors who aren't there, who write it and then give it to you. You do what you want with it, instead of standing there. It was Virginia Woolf herself who compared Joyce to the village explainer.
Yeah.
I get that with these authors. That is what I hate about them. Most of all, what I hate about them. How are we doing for time? Oh my.
23 minutes. So, do you have a favorite Southern audience? Favorite Southern author?
Eudora Welty.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Yes.
Yeah. I love Flannery O'Connor too, but Eudora Welty before anybody.
Yeah, they're my two favorites as well. And Sam said that last week too.
Yes. Eudora Welty got the ultimate endorsement. Nobody cares what the junkyard watchdog likes or doesn't like, but if Sam likes it, oh my.
No, I'm just adding to our illustrious.
They only care that you and Sam like it. And then they're going, ooh, I should read this person. It's me. No. I probably did more for Jed Pearl's next art exhibit in this video than... I still haven't let go of that.
So I have a pair of questions that are related to each other. And the first is about the mid-century misogynists, Updike and Lowell, and, Philip Roth, John Updike, Norman Mailer, Henry Miller, etc., who, at least on this corner of BookTube, are totally having a moment. Do you have favorites?
They're worthless, all of them. And I've been saying that since they
why
were in
are
the
they
beginning of
having
their
a moment?
careers. Okay, well, my meta answer would be, my meta answer is going to sound like the kind of answer that I usually hate on my own channel. It's going to sound like the kind of rhetoric that I hate. And the only reason it's going to sound that way is because some of my rhetoric leads some people to think that I am a sexist. I am actually not. and this rhetoric is going to sound that way. I think the reason why they're having a moment on BookTube is because more men are joining BookTube.
Wow.
I know. I calls them like I sees them. I think that's the reason. I don't think it would happen otherwise.
And are they having a moment outside of BookTube?
Oh, not if I have anything to say about it. I have a lot to say, but I know a lot of critics and a lot of editors. I want these people dead so bad I'm willing to drive a stake into their heart myself. And I've been saying this since the 1970s.
Back when they were alive still.
Yes, when they were the reigning literary lions. I was saying Mailer, Updike, Roth, they all stink. Why can't you see they all stink? I think I know why. I have said it. I made a tweet about it on Twitter, on the Twitter machine. And oh boy, did it get responses to me. I wrote a tweet that said, an author speaking, saying a reader saying, in this case I said it was Philip Roth, but it applies to all of them. Philip Roth is completely fascinated by his own penis. I too am completely fascinated by my own penis. Therefore, Philip Roth is a great writer. I believe that is exactly the alchemy that goes on with all of these people. What else would explain why these people were the titans of the literary world for 40 years when you could hardly swing a dead cat without hitting a woman writer at the same time doing 10 times better work? Why? What else would explain that? That has to be it. So yes, my answer to this question, believe it or not, BookTube, mark it in your calendar, is the patriarchy. I'm sorry, I call them like I see them. That's all there is to it. What about you?
I have no idea why.
You have no idea why, but you have noticed it. I've noticed it too.
Yeah.
I don't want these people to come back. I don't want to have to keep killing them.
The Roth biographies, definitely, especially the one that will not be named, got a lot of people talking about the whole crowd, but I think it was happening beforehand.
Yeah.
So the related question is the furrowed middle brow books coming out of England, which I don't think I've heard you talk about, maybe because they're coming out of England, but are about women writers in the early part of the 20th century through the middle of the 20th century are also having a moment.
What are we talking about for furrowed middle brow? That's a great term. I've
Isn't
never
it a
heard
great
that.
name? It's a press.
Who are we talking about here?
I'm not going to be able to name any of them. D.E. Stevenson, maybe.
Iris Murdoch? People?
No, they tend to be cozier. Maybe not cozier.
Anita Brookner? Is that?
No, not people who were that high level literary, but more. But they're. Oh, you should totally look them up.
I will.
It's furrowed middle brow, but that's maybe Dean Street Press.
I might have read some of the authors in question.
You probably have, but you don't know about this series.
No, not at all.
Because it strikes me that this is the contrary moment, that it's women and cozy rather than aggressive. And it's intriguing to me that they're happening.
I didn't understand it, and I still don't. And it wasn't just fiction. It was nonfiction. It was translations. It was all of it. There was this whole period in the post-war, the post-war decades, second half of the 20th century, just a riot of front parlor misogyny, just channeled into just. I absolutely could not believe it. I thought I was done with it. As I said all along, I said in the 70s and 80s, I said, well, as these people die, their works will die with them. It's only their cult that's keeping it alive. When they're gone, everything will be gone. And then Mad Men happened, celebrating.
Yep.
I couldn't
Well,
believe
you think that was the start of it?
Friends of mine saying, this show, Mad Men, is great. I watched it and thinking, what on earth? I'm not going to go through this. It was terrible the first time. How can you say this is great?
And maybe it's people who haven't lived through it?
Maybe
Is
so.
it young people
Maybe
watching? Oh, no. Well, let's go on. Anthony Bourdain or MFK Fisher?
That's a little bit difficult. MFK Fisher is a better writer. I had a few encounters with Anthony Bourdain. So, but MFK Fisher is a better writer. If we're talking about books to recommend, then her books are great. They are don't be fooled by the fact that they are gastronomical literature. If you're not a gastroneme, I'm not, and I love them. Find a copy of her book. Consider the Oyster, or Serve It Forth, or How to Eat a Wolf. Her books are all classics. Her fiction, maybe not so much, but her nonfiction, she needs to be read. Absolutely needs to be read. What about you? Dare I ask if you?
I love them both, and I didn't expect to love Bourdain, and someone eventually convinced me to watch one of his videos. Now I've forgotten which series it was, and I was just blown away at how sympathetic and empathetic and listening he was able to talk about food as a cultural statement and really try to understand the role.
Seeing him, listening to him really makes a difference.
So good.
If you read him, especially if you just know about him, you might think an element of hauteur. It's only when you see him that you see. A friend of his said, you just have to look at him to see the demons.
Yeah.
This is a person who has them.
And I thought it was misogyny.
Yeah, but
that's not what it felt like at all.
No, it wasn't there at all. It was demons. It was if anything, it was the thing that gets mistaken for misogyny was a kind of wary distrust of everybody, of all humanity.
And I think that's what we saw at the end.
Yeah.
So I know you went to a local Chinese restaurant really, really regularly for a long time. Are there other traditional ethnic cuisines that are not from your own ethnic background that you really like?
My own ethnic background doesn't have much in the way of ethnic cuisines. Get a piece of fish, talk the whole afternoon about how it was too expensive. Then overcook it for 3 days for your guests who are coming on the third day. Now, it's inedible by the time you get to, if you're an Irish cook, it's inedible by the time you get done with it, but it doesn't matter because in the 3 days that you've been overcooking it, you have fallen out permanently with the people who are going to be your guests, so you're not going to serve it anyway. You're going to give it as a cat. Anyway, what were we saying? No, I don't. I don't care about food enough for that to matter. It was just that place. And it wasn't the Chinese cuisine. It wasn't good Chinese food, I'm sure. It was just... It was a skill that the mother had when she came to this country. She had a skill. So I loved that, but only because of the family. There was a little Chinese food restaurant that I used to go to every week. Forever. I mean, for a very, very long time. So that I got to know the proprietors. I was the only non-Oriental person who ever went in. They sharpened their English with me. I helped them with forms. I helped them with paperwork. I helped them with all that sort of stuff. Helped them with copy for the publicity for the restaurant. They brought out their baby son to my table when I was reading the New York Review of Books so that I could see him. They thought I was some sort of good luck. And I just kept going there week after week after week, reading the TLS or the London Review of Books or the New York Times Book Review. And eventually, that baby brought out his baby to my table and said, well, this is something of a tradition. I don't do that anymore, but I did. But that had nothing to do with Chinese food. It's just random. What about you?
Well, I come from two sort of ethnic food traditions. One is Southern, and I love collards and pickled okra, and then the other is Jewish, and I love latkes, especially with hot sauce. And then for foods that I like otherwise, there are two major ethnic communities right around where we've lived of folks, immigrants who've settled relatively recently, and they're both cultures with wonderful food, tons and tons of restaurants that have opened up. And one is Ethiopian, which I love, and the other is South Indian. And I had eaten a lot of Indian food before, but it was all from North India, and so this has been it's been 20 years now, but getting some, and luckily they all are spicy, which is what draws me to Southern food. Do you like spicy food?
Sure. Yeah.
And have you eaten okra? I assume so.
I have.
And did you like it?
No.
How was it prepared?
I don't know any of the details of how it
okra?
can be prepared. I was prepared with the only thing I know is that the one element of the preparation was the vast amount of alcohol drunk by the cook while it was being made. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Well, I'll bring some spicy pickled okra to you next time. Okay, so a couple of questions about Yeah, first
But
year.
we should wrap up, shouldn't we?
Oh yeah, we probably should. Yes.
Not
it's
only
late.
for videos, but because we're eating our whole visit. Let's just wrap up with this next one.
Yes, that sounds great. So, as you know, your subscribers love your rants, but
You do, don't you?
they also are you love their incredibly kind-hearted videos that are more personal.
I'm very happy that that comes through.
There was
A lot of
one
things-
about a boy who was ill and wanted a dog, and
Yes.
we really all
Yes.
love that. Do you have a preference for those?
Oh, if
Making
you
one or
want
the
me to
other?
make a video for a young person, I love talking to children. Absolutely love talking to them. And my experience, I don't know what it's worth, but my experience is they love me talking to them.
So did you just naturally become a mentor? Is it a natural skill, or did you have someone?
Well, I'm
you
not
liked?
not a mentor to children. But I love talking to them. I don't talk to them as children. I never, no matter how young they are. If they're too young to reason at all, if they're too young to make sense at all, just a ball of emotions, then I just politely don't have anything to do with them. But once they can talk, I just talk to them like people, and I get a good response that way. But I don't. It's not mentor until they hit 18. You parents out there, if you have young boys who are, little monsters and kicking things all the time and whatnot, and you're worried about what they're going to be like when they're teenagers, well, I can't help you with the early teenage years, but once they're a full-blown, broody, locks the door from the inside teenager, I can talk to them. I speak fluent teenage boy. I don't know why, but I do. They have no place to escape from me. They cannot escape into sarcasm. I do sarcasm better than they do. They cannot escape into memes. I know their memes better than they do. They can't go anywhere. They can't escape. I've had many teenage boys say exactly that. I can't escape you. I can't fake you out the way I can fake out my parents. Usually that is said as a prelude to let's be friends. And I think that's a key element, is that I take them seriously. I actually want to be their friend. I don't want to teach them anything. I want to be their friend. But they'll learn a lot too. About Erasmus. Where's the sign-up sheet? Plus rants as well. I think one of the visceral appeals that rants have, just in general, is that at least it's someone who completely believes something. In the 21st century, that has gone away. You don't know, especially on a platform like YouTube. If you watch as much YouTube as I do, you watch a lot of people who absolutely do not mean anything that they're saying, and I do, and ranters tend to. It's just that a lot of it is really soiling. I don't know how much YouTube you watch.
I don't watch a lot, other than BookTube.
Just as well.
I watch a few knitting ones occasionally.
There are knitting channels on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
But what would they
Huge.
be?
They talk about yarn, and fiber, and spinning, making patterns.
And there are things to talk about?
There are things to talk about, and it's actually quite visual too, because you can show someone how to do particular stitches or the thing you just made.
There's more than one kind of stitch.
Oh yes. I'll teach you to knit.
Oh, I have no sense of touch in my fingers. I don't think I'd be very good at it.
Yeah.
Did you knit that?
No, this is just.
But you
Fiber.
knit clothing of your own?
Yes, I did. And
Actually,
I taught
Sarah at the Bookish Knitter, as her channel name might indicate, also knits. In fact, she mentioned in just a recent video of hers, she mentioned something. I'm wondering if you feel the same way. She mentioned knitting socks, and she said that she names all of her socks because she spends time with them, months, to make a pair of socks.
Oh, that's funny.
So they feel like friends or children of hers. So she names them.
That's great.
Does
So
does
I
article
do
clothing
knit
take a long
socks,
time
but-
for you?
Usually it takes like a month at least. Yeah.
I would never be able to do that. Never.
But it's not like reading for you, where you read literally all day. This is a few hours at most a day.
And it's
in
calming,
general. It's
right?
very calming.
I
yeah.
know that because I've seen people do it on the subway.
Well, I taught my son to knit when he was 5, something like that, and then that night he taught David to knit, and David became a huge sock knitter.
Really?
He's knitting a sweater right now.
Wow. Sarah at the Bookish Knitter made me a pair of gloves.
Oh yeah, red
And they're
knits,
amazing.
Right?
They're like a design I've never seen before. They're not,
Those are beautiful.
they're like tubes. They're like tube socks for your hands. So if I wanted to, I could cover my fingers completely. But I could also pull my hands out completely and just have them be on my
And they have
wrist.
the flips over, is that right?
No, they don't have flips. They were just tubes.
Just tubes.
which was remarkable for the design, because you don't need the flips if you could pull the thing entirely over your hands. They were that long. It was absolutely delightful. I didn't even want to ask how long it took to do.
I'll have to see them in person.
Yeah, they must be here somewhere. Oh, goodness. Bean,
Okay.
you want to come back up here? We should probably get on with our evening. The Bean is wandering all around here, just staring at us. That's two 40-minute videos of bookworms talking to each other. But, you know, this is what they wanted. When we posted those pictures together at the Brattle, I got bombarded with emails. People saying, my two favorite booktubers. You have to make a video together. This will show them. Careful what you wish for. This is your whole day, listening to us natter about all things bookish. Not Brian and bookish. Now we're going to turn off the camera and talk only about Brian and bookish.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was a lot of fun. We'll have to continue. She's going to come back. Everybody has to come to a Thai cottage at least once, but I prefer multiple times. Oh, baby, you want to come through here? You do. All right, we're going to wrap this up and pay attention to the Bean. Her Highness is being neglected. I will see you soon, book team.